Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So I found this article the other day where an individual was writing into a columnist for some financial advice. Here was their question. I have been putting $500 a month into a Roth IRA for a couple of years. I just got my statement and I only have $20,000 in the account. I should be way ahead of this. I also have $14,432 in an online investment account. But I'm 69 years old and have no hope of any retirement. My mortgage is $1,400 per month, and I don't know the best way to grow my money. What type of professional should I be looking for to help me figure out my future? As a YouTuber who just simply loves thinking about money and running through possible scenarios, I thought it might be fun to dive into this. But that's a really scary situation to be in. And honestly, it's not that far-fetched for a lot of Americans to find themselves in this situation. In fact, according to the US Census Bureau data, 50% of women and 47% of men between the ages of 55 and 66 have no retirement savings at all. That is millions of people, quite frankly, right on the brink of retirement who have nothing saved for retirement. That's a scary situation to be in. It makes me think of those cartoons where someone says, you can retire now, you just have to die fairly soon after. But even with a small amount of savings, people do find a way to make their retirement work. Consider that the median retirement account balance for those age 65 and over is nearly $70,000, which is double what this individual writing into this columnist currently has. But either situation isn't really the most ideal. And I think it would be really easy for us to sit here and say, oh, well, you should have just started saving sooner. Even small amounts, say $100 a month or $25 a week, these small amounts invested over the course of an entire lifetime would leave you with substantially more. The person in this example is 69 years old, but just for the sake of argument and the ease of calculation, let's round that up to 70. If you were to invest just $100 a month over the course of 50 years, starting at the age of 20 and investing until the age of 70, that would be over $700,000. So accumulating wealth over time is a simple process, and it's easy to do with small amounts of money. In this example, our investor would only have invested $60,000 over the course of those 50 years. But just because it's a simple process, it doesn't mean that people stick to it. And also, if you find yourself in this situation, no amount of saying you should have done something differently years ago fixes the situation you're currently in. So let's look at this individual situation where they have roughly $34,000 saved up for retirement. So often when we talk about investing for your future, especially from the perspective of a personal finance channel, we talk about investing and building up a nest egg large enough that you can have a safe withdrawal rate from. And maybe those safe withdrawal rates are maybe 3%, 4%, or 5%. And if you apply any of these withdrawal rates to a $34,000 portfolio, you can see the annual draw is absurdly low. So safe to say, you're not going to be following some safe withdrawal rate in an attempt to preserve this portfolio throughout your entire retirement. It just wouldn't provide a sustainable living situation. Honestly, I would kind of look at this $34,000 more as a buffer and as an emergency fund. At this point, this person has an income problem, and the reality is they're likely going to have to heavily rely on Social Security to fund their retirement. And I'm making a big assumption here that this person has worked throughout their entire working career and has Social Security available to them. Now, the average Social Security payout is fairly modest, and if you delay claiming, your benefit does increase. You can claim as early as 62, but for each year you delay, your benefit will increase 8% all the way up to the age of 70. There's no point in delaying past 70 simply because your benefit doesn't increase beyond that. Again, a lot of assumptions are being made here, but that's because we're operating off incomplete information. But I am going to assume that this person has already started to claim Social Security, because after all, less than 10% of people actually wait until 70 to claim. The average Social Security monthly benefit for workers is about $1,500 a month. And in our example here, this individual said they have a mortgage payment of $1,400 a month. And in most circumstances, that seems like a very reasonable mortgage payment, but not necessarily the case if your income is $1,500 a month. So I think it's very realistic to suggest that this one-day wannabe retiree should get a roommate, or if you want to use a new school terminology, they should house hack. One of my all-time favorite shows in the world was The Golden Girls, and those ladies lived together because they couldn't afford to live separately. So this individual should rent out 1 or possibly 2 bedrooms if they have the space. If you take on 1 renter, you automatically cut your housing costs in half. If you can spread that out over 2 renters, you can potentially bring your housing costs down to $460 for the mortgage, and you would still have to pay utilities on top of that. And I actually think that that's a better option than going the route of relocating and renting someplace else. Because if you enter the rental market, there's a very real possibility that rents might actually be more expensive than this mortgage if this mortgage was locked in during a time when interest rates were extremely favorable. Also, once you start renting, you have to deal with the fact that on an annual basis, rents are probably going to go up and they're probably going to keep pace with inflation. If this person can stay put, they know that they have fixed housing costs, at least in terms of what that mortgage is. Even with 2 roommates, this individual still has housing, excluding their utilities, making up more than 30% of their pay. But it's a start. Depending on this person's housing situation and how much equity they have built up in their home, perhaps this individual would want to consider a reverse mortgage. When it comes to a reverse mortgage, your age, how much equity you have built up in your home, and current market interest rates are all going to play a factor into what amount you might be eligible for. But generally speaking, the older you are and the more equity you have in your home, the more you'd be eligible for. And reverse mortgages do have multiple options when it comes to payouts. Generally, you can do a one-time lump sum payment, or you can do a line of credit where you can access funds as needed up to a predetermined limit, or monthly payments, where you receive regular monthly payments for a set period or as long as you live in the home, or even a combination of these options. Generally, when it comes to a reverse mortgage, you can get anywhere from 40 to 60% of the home's appraised value. But remember that this individual currently has a mortgage payment, so that means they have an outstanding mortgage, which if they were to get a reverse mortgage, they'd first have to clear up that outstanding debt. And depending on how much of a mortgage they have, that's going to determine whether this is even a viable option. For instance, if this individual has a $200,000 outstanding mortgage on a home valued at $400,000, they wouldn't qualify. However, if they had an outstanding mortgage of, say, $100,000 on that same home, they would qualify for nearly $100,000. Important to note that if this individual does eventually move out of the home, or if they pass away before that happens, this home would be used as collateral to pay back the reverse mortgage. And I'm not trying to suggest that a reverse mortgage is always the best option, but in a situation where you have no money to fall back on, it can be one solution to the problem. Of course, this does mean that this individual is not going to be leaving behind their home to, say, their heirs, but you have to consider priorities in this situation. What's most important at this time is that this person can fund their retirement. Leaving behind any sort of legacy to their heirs really is secondary to having their survival in old age. The biggest question that this individual had was wanting to grow their money. My fear at this point is that this individual might end up going to a not so well-meaning financial professional, and they would be in a situation of desperation and then find themselves more vulnerable to shysters and scammers. And speaking of scammers, the number of comments that I see left on this YouTube channel from people saying, oh, they're making $10,000 a week or $50,000 a month, those are all scams. Never click on any of them, because even if somebody really is making $10,000 a week, there is a 0% chance that they're actually leaving comments about it here on YouTube. It's also worth keeping in mind that it might be hard to find an investment professional to work with at this level of wealth, because many financial advisors out there won't actually work with someone unless they have a substantial sum saved up. That could be $100,000. In some situations, it could be $500,000 or even higher than that. And that can make it really hard for the everyday person to get sound financial advice. When people get desperate, that can be when it's really easy to cross the line from investing into gambling. And you don't want to gamble away your life savings trying to chase some next get-rich-quick scheme. I get really concerned when I see statements like, I have been putting away $500 a month into a Roth IRA for a couple years. I just got my statement and I only have $20,000 in this account. I should be way ahead of this. But that's what the beginning is. This is where the grind is. Even though this person is 69, they're still in the beginning of their investing career. It's in the beginning where your contributions are making up the bulk of your portfolio. You're doing the heavy lifting. You need to be investing for at least, say, a decade or so before you really start to notice compounding taking the reins. And unfortunately, this person doesn't necessarily have that kind of time. So the reality of this situation is that I think this individual should create a very balanced but conservative portfolio. So making sure to have cash on hand, having a well-established emergency fund that you only touch in emergencies, start working on cutting housing costs. Maybe that involves getting a roommate or two, exploring the option of potentially a reverse mortgage. But outside of that, the reality may be that this individual has to keep working in their golden years. However, if they can be flexible with their living situation, they can drastically reduce their housing costs, which maybe can allow them to work out their golden years by doing a semi-retired state or a part-time retired state. I actually love reading all of these hypothetical money questions. Well, I guess they aren't hypothetical because they're real people writing in with real questions. I see them a lot on MSN. I see them a lot from a columnist called The Moneyist. I read about different versions of this on Refinery29, but I think reading about all these different scenarios that people go through with their finances can help you gain greater perspective on your own situation. We have a very financially astute audience here. What kind of armchair advice would you give to this individual? Leave your thoughts in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.